Ladies and gentlemen, today I'm in Kibera. I'm going to be talking to a beautiful lady who has achieved so much in her life that only some of us can dream of achieving such. Welcome to Citizen Digital. My name is Georgina Njogu. Come with me.
Hi, how are you?
Miriam.
Oh, good to see you. Welcome.
To see you. Thank you. How are you?
I'm very fine.
Nice to see you.
Yeah,
and
good weather.
Thank you for having us. Yes.
You're welcome.
Yeah,
welcome.
I'm
so happy to see you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So we begin from you introducing yourself.
Okay. My name is Engineer Miriam Sagini.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a professional civil engineer.
Mm-hmm. Let me start by asking, did you always want to be a civil engineer?
Actually, no. I didn't even know what civil engineering was about until I cleared high school and I got good mathematics grades. And back then our teachers were telling us, if you score an A, you can go and do engineering, what. If you score a B, you can go do what. If you score a D, you can be a business owner, things like that. And that's how I found myself in civil engineering in JKUAT.
Initially, what did you want to be?
I wanted to be an architect. And before that, I wanted to be a pilot when I was young.
So you always liked maths?
Yeah, primary.
If I'm in school and I want to be a civil engineer, which courses should I focus on mainly?
Subjects, I think mathematics is important. For my practice of civil and geotechnical engineering, geography is also very important.
Yes.
And physics is important.
Okay. What inspired you to change from architecture to civil engineering?
Okay, so as I said previously,
Yeah.
I just found myself in civil engineering, and then during the first 1-2 weeks I wanted to change to architecture, and then I discovered that the course, first of all, architecture was slightly longer than civil engineering, so that was a determining factor. And I also kind of liked my classmates, so I decided to stick to civil engineering, and I've never regretted my decision.
So there is no mentor, no one you knew who was a civil engineer, nothing?
No. But my father, who I haven't talked about yet, my father, we used to make aerials with my dad when we were young. So I was used to working with my hands since when I was young. And I think I also wanted to know what engineering is like, practicing, because I was already inoculated in that when I was young.
Okay.
In another way.
So what does a civil engineer, the role entail?
Simple, civil engineers solve problems in the built environment. So civil engineering is split into three. There is structural engineering and everything that encompasses that. There is highway engineering, things to do with roads, and there is water engineering. So I'm specialized in structures, and inside structures I also do geotechnical engineering, which is engineering of soil and rocks in short. And structures is the buildings.
Such as this one?
Such as this one,
Okay.
which we did in 2022 and completed.
So what does a typical day for you as a civil engineer look like? From morning, maybe your role, what you do?
I wake up, I go to the office, I read my emails, and then after that I'll have 1 or 2 sites to visit per day. And then I will go to site to inspect either formwork or reinforcement or the concrete or things like that. And then if I'm done with site, that is probably the end of my day.
Okay.
Yeah.
And before we get to the complex matters on engineering, once you take this hat off, the engineering hat off, who is Miriam?
So Miriam, outside civil engineering, Miriam is a guitar player. I play guitar. Miriam...
Do you play it professionally? Not just a hobby?
I play in church.
Oh, in church?
Yeah, and I used to gig in 2018. I had a small hiatus with my career of a few months, so I played guitar. And then now I went back to practicing engineering fully. So nowadays I just play guitar in church. Yeah. Also, Miriam likes traveling a lot, because I find that is a very good use of my time.
Your dream destination before you go any further?
My dream destination?
Yes.
I want to go see the airport in Singapore.
Why?
It's very beautiful, and the way it's built attracts me as an engineer.
Okay.
And other than that, the aesthetics are also very good. So one day I'd want to go see the airport in Singapore. Miriam is also into family. I really love family. Yeah.
What does it take for one to become an engineer or a civil engineer in Kenya?
Professionally?
Yes.
First of all, you have to...
There's unprofessionally?
It's like there are stages.
Okay.
Yeah. So once you graduate school, you are a graduate engineer, you register with the Engineers Board of Kenya and the Institution of Engineers of Kenya as a graduate. And then after some years of practicing, if you choose to, you can go do the examination with EBK or IEK, and they register you as a professional. And then with IEK, you are registered as a corporate, which I am, because I'm a professionally registered engineer with EBK and a corporate member of IEK. Then there are other levels past that. If I practice for more years and I choose to go do the exam and become fellow engineer with IEK and become a consulting engineer with EBK, I can also choose to do that.
Ah, okay.
Yes, so those are the levels of engineering in Kenya.
So ladies are known to be very meticulous when it comes to details, like very keen.
Yeah.
Do you think ladies will make good civil engineers or engineers?
Absolutely, absolutely. All the ladies I know who are older than me are engineers to be admired in Kenya. And in my own practice, I've not had a hard time, to be honest. And with all the sites I've been to, I think I've done a pretty good job with details. Because I'm usually very keen to details when I inspect, when I do my drawings. Yeah.
How is the engineering field for women? Are there many women? I know it's male dominated.
Yeah, it is.
How is it for women?
There are not many women, to be honest, especially professional going up. The women are few, but graduate engineers, there are many ladies. Yeah, so the women are few, as you said, and as a result, it gets very interesting to see a lady who is an engineer. But for me, how I choose to approach it is whether I'm a lady or a man, work has to be done.
Yeah.
And then the lady just becomes the ice on the cake, so that this drawing, like for example, this structure, it's done well, I believe. And then
it is beautiful.
Yeah. And then now someone knowing who the engineer behind it was would be like, alas, it was a lady.
You've said you're not many ladies.
Yeah, professionally registered, not many.
Would you call it a lonely career for women?
Yes and no. Why I say that is all my peers in engineering are men. And as a result, when I talk about my career with ladies, they tend not to understand me 100% because of all the challenges that I go through. Because every career has a challenge.
What kind of challenges?
For example, when I was starting out, you'd find, you can see my body is very small.
Yes.
When I go to sites and when I'm trying to give instructions to foremen, they tend not to listen to me so much because I'm tiny and I'm a lady. So that is also a disadvantage on its own, but it's not necessarily a very bad one. So the more I continued practicing, the more I became confident. And nowadays, I just get addressed to as engineer without the gender connotation to it. Yeah.
And any other challenges, maybe as a lady in the industry?
The challenges as a lady, sometimes we go to sites and we find people who don't want to respect boundaries. Ordinarily, if it was a man and a man, they'd respect the bro boundaries. But when it comes to a lady, they want to start playing around with you just because you're a lady. And the connotation is that men are supposed to be endearing towards ladies, but you're there to work. So some of these challenges in drawing those boundaries can be quite challenging, but thankfully I've been able to overcome all that. What
do you think can be done maybe to improve or to get more women in this field?
I think mentorship and the regulatory body of Kenya and also Institution of Engineers of Kenya, they usually organize mentorship to girls' high schools, sometimes to universities. I've also had a few in, I'm not sure about church, maybe just someone speaks on their own volition and then they happen to be an engineer. But I've had a lot of high schools and women encouraging younger girls to take up the engineering role because it's a very beautiful career as women making decisions such as this, which actually is a matter of life and death, because if a building collapses, that is a whole other story.
Yeah, for sure. What will you consider by far is your greatest accomplishment in this field?
In my engineering practice, I also do a lot of repairing of buildings. Not myself repair, but I design the repair methodology and supervise the implementation. And very recently, I just completed the repair of a foundation of a 7-story structure somewhere in Nairobi. It was a very challenging task because the circumstances which led to the building being compromised are not the most ideal.
Yeah.
And repairing it was also quite difficult. But we finished that, and everything was approved by the bodies that are supposed to approve in the Nairobi County. And yeah, I really am proud of that project.
Before we get to the collapse of buildings, in Nairobi, let me ask you about your favorite project so far. You have talked about your biggest accomplishment, your favorite project.
My favorite project.
Yes.
So my favorite project so far has to be, because I work in Lamu a lot, so we just finished a massive one-bedroom villa. It's only one bedroom, but it's so big and it has so many tiny components to it, and that's my favorite project.
That's your favorite project?
Yeah.
What amount of work goes to the construction of a building into a project, Yani, before and after? How much work goes into such a project?
Okay, so the process is, because engineers work together with other professionals, we don't just work standalone unless maybe it's like a repair of a building. So the client comes with a brief to the architect, then the architect does his work, then now the work comes to me.
The architect is one will draw?
Yes, the architect draws how the building will look like and how the spacings. And then the work comes to me, and it's my job as an engineer to know how the building will be supported. And then I will produce the drawings, and then after that they will go to get approval with the necessary county. So now in Nairobi County, the building goes to get approved at City Hall. Then after that, they get the permit of construction from NCA. Then after that, they get other permits for like the NEMA permit and other necessary ones. Then now the construction begins, and you start from the foundation, you excavate the foundation, then you go building until you finish. And how I like to do my work is I like inspecting at every stage.
Okay.
So I usually give, together with my construction drawings, I give the checklists which I tick after performing every inspection, so that by the time we're done, we confirm everything has been inspected.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have seen cases of buildings collapsing in Nairobi, several cases. There is another one very recent. What can be done? First of all, where do we go wrong? And what can be done to avoid such cases in the future?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, because before I started my self-employment journey, I worked for a very experienced engineer who has over 60 years of experience, 59, 60 years. And part of his specialty was actually doing the structural audit of these buildings that have collapsed, many. In his practice in Kenya, he's done over 300. And when I was working for him, I did so many. And right now, when I'm working for myself, I've not done any building that has collapsed, but as I said earlier, I've done the audit of a building that has been compromised. And from what I've seen, I think there are two types of failures. There's the structural failure and there's the geotechnical failure. So when a building fails because of geotechnical issues, you find it's because the engineer did not have the parameters to design the foundations, and they under-designed with a very low bearing capacity. So when it starts raining and then there's a lot of moisture content on the soil, the foundations develop something called a slip circle, and then they slip. That is why you'd see a building is intact, but it looks like
it's bending.
It's bending. So that is a geotechnical failure. And a structural failure is more straightforward, because you find elements like columns have been under-designed. Maybe what I've seen happening is a developer gets an approval for 4 floors, and then after they've gotten an approval, they go ahead and do 7, 8 floors without involving the structural engineer on record. And then, of course, that has not been designed for.
If I live in an apartment building, how would I know that where I live, the building is about to collapse?
Okay, that's a very interesting question, but it doesn't have a straightforward answer. So the best way to answer that is, you know, there are different classifications of cracks. So a crack wider than, say, 2 millimeters, it's good to notify the authorities, who will come with their technical team to inspect, and then they will make a technical assessment on if the cracks are structural or not structural, and then they will act after that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in Kenya, we see Kenya outsourcing, like the government of Kenya outsourcing engineers and constructors from outside Kenya to come and construct roads and such things. Are we not good enough?
We are good enough. We are good enough. I think what we need to do is continue practicing because I feel like we are not hard as Kenyan engineers. Yes, I understand there are quirks who spoil our name,
Yes.
but not all of us are like that. So we just need to be out there and practice, and our work will be seen.
So it's possible for Kenya to get railway constructors,
Absolutely.
road constructors
Absolutely.
from Kenya?
Absolutely.
Without outsourcing?
Yes, we have very good and very qualified engineers in Kenya. It's just that we haven't heard of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As I wind up here, I want you to tell us some of the projects out there, not necessarily in Kenya,
Okay.
but if you have one in Kenya, you can mention
Okay.
it, that thrill you, that this is magnificent.
Oh, wow.
Such a project. Or
Absolutely.
constructions.
In Kenya, the Two Rivers Mall, it's so, every time I go there, I usually just get amazed at how humongous and how this mall has been very well built, and the spaces, I like the spaces, I like the slabs, they have no beams, so that was a very interesting engineering principle. Outside Kenya, Burj Khalifa normally interests me so much.
Yeah.
I've been there severally, and anytime I look at it, I always wonder what was going through the mind of the engineer, because it's not a very easy thing to put up, and there are very heavy winds up there, and the fact that it's not collapsing and not falling out because of the wind is very interesting. I also said earlier the airport in Singapore.
Yes.
That is very interesting to me.
You do know Kenya, we are the Singapore of Africa.
We are the Singapore of Africa, so we are getting there.
We're getting there.
We're getting there.
So thank you
Yeah.
so much for your time.
You're welcome.
Before I wind up,
Yeah.
you told us to come to this location.
Absolutely.
What is so special about this location?
Yeah, so as you can see, what is special about this building, the technology employed to build is not very popular in Kenya.
First of all, before you go on,
Yeah.
it is one of your
It's
projects.
one of my projects.
From start
From
to end?
scratch to finish.
Okay,
Yes.
go on. Sorry.
Yes. So the technology employed is not very popular in Kenya. So this I had are called twisted blocks in Kibera. The place of manufacturing is somewhere in Kibera. So the idea is to conceal the columns
Okay.
so that you don't see them. But there are some places that are hollow, and where the structural columns, we actually have reinforcement and concrete. Like here, this is a column, and then there are columns there, and then some parts are hollow. Yeah,
This is a school.
it's a school.
What is there any advantage of using this particular
The
design?
twisted blocks.
Yes. Is there any advantage?
Not from a structural point, but it was more or less supporting the Kibera community with this from the client side, who is Acacia Tree Lodge. They wanted to support the community, that's why they adopted this.
Okay.
And I did my technical analysis, and I saw that it works, so why not? And as
Okay.
you can see, it looks very aesthetic, and it's
Yeah.
actually very interesting to look at because it looks different from any other building.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Thank you so much for your time, Miriam.
You're
And
welcome.
I wish you all the best.
Thank
Keep
you so much.
shining.
Thank you so much.
Any last words as you close? Any last remarks maybe to somebody who is coming up as an engineer? Any last remark?
What I'd like to tell lady engineers and upcoming engineers is for the ladies who are afraid of practicing because they're afraid of immersing themselves in this industry that is so male dominated, come, let us grow together. Engineering is a very, very interesting career in Kenya and also in the world. To the upcoming engineers, what I'd like to tell you is sometimes it's very tempting to succumb to shortcuts because you want to make it easy, but I'd like to urge you, don't ever succumb to that. Just take the due process, do everything properly. It might take time, but one day you'll get your licenses, and one day you're also going to get to the point where the engineers, even I look up to, are at. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time, Miriam.
You're welcome.
And to you, our viewer, thank you so much. Till next time. Adios.